an app. Some of everybody don't piloted it. State piloted it. Dr. Wagner, you don't have a launch of this. So this is your very first sneak peek at it. Over the summer, we'll start implementing it. A lot of the chaos that help your get called with hang out and hopefully be easier. This will just be learning how to use the app and then knowing what your doctor wants as far as. So it's available, but nobody's got it. So this is just kind of looking at it, see how it works, and we'll go.
Okay. I do not want to butcher anyone's last name, but I know we have Nicole Alexander. She's sales manager, and I believe an athletic trainer as well.
Yes.
And Crosby. This
Bogenhagen.
Say one more time.
Bogenhagen.
Bogenhagen. There we go. And she's the director of operations with Neurotech Insights. All right, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, it is nice to meet everyone. I'm Nicole Alexander, and again, both Crosby and I are athletic trainers, so we understand how implementing a new resource can be a challenge. So we are here to introduce you to the product, hopefully get you started on it, and answer any questions you have today. What our objectives are today are to assess and evaluate the gait function with the BKG Gait assessment. And also do that with the continuous progress test with the cognitive assessment. And finally, to understand how to administer a baseline and post-injury test using the SportGait app. Just one disclosure that we are both employees of Neurotech Insight. We used to be SportGait, but we have merged with a company called Heads Together Health. So we are now one company, Neurotech Insight, powering the SportGait app, and we have stock in the company. So this is just a little bit about my background. I spent a long time in college athletics at University of Notre Dame and UNC Chapel Hill, and was also in the WNBA. I've done a lot of work with USA Basketball, including going to Paris last summer with the women's national team. So again, one of you guys to my heart and soul. Once you're an athletic trainer, always an athletic trainer. Same thing with Crosby, background in athletic training, and has been with the company a lot longer than I have, but again, has a lengthy history in college athletics. So before we get started, if anyone is interested in trying out a baseline, we want to make that available to you. So Crosby is going to put a link in the chat for those that are not in person. But I wanted to put this QR code up here for anyone that's in the room. And this will just give you a chance to walk through the demo of a baseline so you have a little bit better understanding of what the baseline is going to be as we're talking through it. So I'm going to leave that up for a little bit and give everybody a chance to scan that. Okay. So who we are, what we do, right? So we are an app-based platform focusing on baseline documentation and measurement. What we pride ourselves on is to be ever evolving. So as we partner with you in your schools and as you use our platform, we want to hear from you. What would make it a little bit better? What maybe isn't working so well, right? We don't want to have one platform that stays the same for the next 5 to 10 years, not even the next 2 years if we can help it. So again, ever evolving as we learn more in the research and as we learn more from our customers. What we also pride ourselves on is we hit all of the check marks that are described in the most recent consensus statement. So we are hitting not only your history and your neuropsychological side, we're looking at gait, balance, your mental status, vestibular function, and all of that is going to be in one place for you as you see as we continue on with the presentation. Some of our features that we have, again, the CPT Cognitive test, which we're going to go in detail about, as well as the BKG Gait assessment. But we also have available to you balance. So there is the opportunity to do a best test right in the app, to do VOMs. Your athlete can put in their signs and symptoms. There's an easy sideline assessment. And again, we'll show you how this documentation can be put into a PDF for easy access, or putting it easily into your EMR or sharing that information with your physician. So we're going to start by going through how you would administer a baseline in your institution, at your school. So what we would do is we would provide a QR code similar to the one I just showed you for your specific school. And what a lot of our athletic trainers end up doing is printing out that QR code and posting it either in the athletic training room or wherever you're doing your mass testing, your mass baselines, your mass physicals. The athlete comes up, scans that QR code. They're able to then download the app and complete the baseline assessment completely on their own. Now, again, those of you who work in high school or just athletes in general, because they don't always focus and follow instructions, this can be done under your supervision, or you can have them do it at home. If your school does not allow phones for whatever reason, this can also be sent to the parents. So again, it can be done remotely and you're still getting that information. When the athlete logs in, once they download the app, this is what it's going to look like for them. This is what they'll see on their screen. So they're going to be asked to do a brief medical history, a symptom evaluation, cognitive measure, and the gait analysis. And this is all completed in approximately 10 to 12 minutes, depending on the person, but no, it should be no more than 12 minutes. So let's talk a little bit more about our cognitive measure. So what is the CPT cognitive test? It is a challenging go, no-go cognitive test. So the instructions are to hit every letter except X. So what you'll see is there's just letters that come up at random at a different cadence in a different order for 7 minutes. And so the patient is asked to, again, you have to focus on it for 7 minutes and you're not going to hit the letter X. This is derived from Connor's continuous performance test, and it's used to look at and quantify executive function. So again, with that executive function, we're getting valid measurements on working memory, impulsivity, variability in attention, and processing speed, which again, the consensus statement suggests that all of these can be associated with assessing a concussion. One I like to point out as an athletic trainer is the variability in attention. 7 minutes is a long time to do one task. So when you have someone who has ADHD, the good thing is this test is actually used in a lot of ADHD research. So there is correction for that. So if you have someone that you know is ADHD, the system will ask them if they've taken their medication that day. And so it can help decide when they take the test, if that's a question for you. But again, there's always those athletes who you may not know or who are not truthful of whether or not they've taken their medicine. But the question is there, so it can be documented. So why would you use this versus some of the other assessments out there that are sitting at a desktop, sitting at a computer for 25 to 30 or more minutes? It's widely accepted. The brief administration, again, it makes it more efficient, not only for you, but for the athlete. So if you have an entire football team of 50 to 100 kids, depending on the size of your institution, the ability to have them do this remotely, one, is helpful, but again, the fact that it only takes 10 to 12 minutes, you're going to get a lot more buy-in. And finally, the reliability. The test is consistent in that there is always a randomness factor. The letters come in at a different order and a different cadence. So you're not going to get that learned effect. So when we talk about post-tests, and we're going to get to this a little bit later, you can do this test every day, and you're not going to get better at it simply by repeating the test. What we see a lot with concussion assessment is the athletes learn how to take the test, they learn how to pass the test. So we are able with this type of test to, again, to assess for that and correct for that. And finally, the validity. The test measures what it claims to measure. It allows for large effects differing between concussions and non-concussed individuals. So again, think of that as you have an athlete who is reporting maybe questionable symptoms, right? They're either reporting no symptoms and you think that they should have symptoms, or they're reporting a lot of symptoms, but otherwise they seem like they're doing okay. What we're going to be able to do is either endorse or not endorse those symptoms by using this test. So this is what it actually looks like. Again, so this is what the instructions are going to look like for the patient as they take the test. You're instructed to turn your phone horizontally. The biggest issue we see with these instructions is that the screen is locked. So when you turn it horizontally, nothing happens. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. And again, you're instructed to tap the screen for every letter except X. So we're looking at your processing speed, your attention, your impulse control, and your working memory. Again, those of you who have decided to try the demo can understand 7 minutes is a pretty long time to do the same task. Also to note that the athlete is given a practice run of 30 seconds prior to taking the actual assessment. And if they are doing the testing correctly, let's say they hit every time they saw X rather than the opposite, then it will give them those instructions, tell them what they did wrong, and give them another 30 seconds to make sure that they're doing the test correctly before continuing on with the assessment. And then what you're going to see results-wise right there on the phone. So you as an administrator on the account will be able to see everyone's, but the patient themselves will be able to see their results. But it's very straightforward. You can see here, it's a very clear red to green visual scale. If they have a baseline and then they've taken a post-test after injury, their baseline will be highlighted and you will see lines for every post-test that they've taken. So obviously we want to see this moving closer to green and closer to their baseline, but this also allows you the opportunity to have those conversations with your athlete, with the parent, because I know sometimes parents can be challenging in that they think they know their kid better than anybody else, but this is very clear visual representation of how their kid is doing. With that, each person is also given a T-score compared to the normative data in their age range. And our normative data ranges from age 9 to 90. So in the instance that you don't have a baseline, you're still getting an accurate representation of where they fall within their age range. So I know I kind of went over a lot of information there. Crosby is in the chat, but are there any questions that we can answer before we move on?
I have a question. Can they hear me? Yeah, I can hear you. You said it'll ask them if they have ADHD, if they've taken their meds. Does it tell them not to do it if they haven't taken their meds?
No, that would be a conversation that you would have to have with them. It just will mark down if they've taken their meds or not. So if their results are way off from their baseline, you will know that as a factor because it'll be documented.
So if you had someone who took a baseline and for some reason they didn't take their meds that day, the only thing we suggest is if you're post-testing, do it in the same state. So you would schedule that post-test and say, hey, you didn't take your meds on your baseline, don't take your meds, tomorrow when you come in for the post-test, you can have them post-test and then you can have them take their meds after. there are no questions in the chat, Nicole.
Okay. All right. Let's keep going. All right. So next we're going to talk about the BKG Gait assessment. So what is the BKG Gait assessment? BKG stands for biokinetograph, and I just chose not to say that word 100 times in this presentation, so we say BKG. It is a novel method of gait analysis, and the participant will walk with the cell phone held to their chest. And the reason that this is it actually removes your hands, so you're getting a truer assessment of how their lower body is moving and how their balance is. And it uses the accelerometers in the phone and will collect data about the movement through space. So what it is that it's processed through algorithms, and it will identify key gait features like heel strike and toe off. So if you can see that in this graph here, where we're getting our measurements through the gait process. And you'll get these features are used to calculate a BKG indicator. And then again, the indicators are sent to the providers in the form of T-scores. So just like the cognitive assessment, you're going to get a T-score based on their gait assessment for their height and their age range. So why do we use this test? Again, looking at the consensus statement, we're getting a lot of information from this gait test. You're getting not only balance, but you're going to get symmetry, power, and your stride assessment. It's objective. You walk the way that you walk. So again, when we look at something like the best test, that is very subjective based on the clinician. This is something that's completely objective. So you're not getting that inner user error. It's non-invasive. When we first started out, this gait assessment was done using sensors that had to be strapped to the patient. So now we have removed all of that and it's all on the phone. Again, it's accessible. And finally, reliable, the consistency of the test. So just like with the cognitive assessment, it's going to be pretty hard to trick this test, right? To learn it, because you walk how you walk, and you're going to do 3 trials. So we're taking the average of that rather than just a one-time assessment. Again, we want to talk about the validity of this test. So it's going to measure what it claims to measure, and our results significantly correlate to the NIH 4M gait test and the BEST. And so like I mentioned, BEST test is something that we all use clinically or have used at some point. It's very widely accepted. So this is something that is a little bit more objective, or a lot more objective, but you're going to get similar, if not better, results. Also, we can mention that it significantly predicts based on the CDC concussion symptom endorsement. So again, you have an athlete that comes in and it's like, oh, I feel great, I have no symptoms. You have them walk and their gait just is not normal, whether that's in their balance or their symmetry. They can't fake that versus just telling you that they feel great. And again, we're looking at quantitative and qualitative data. So we're trying to get as much information as we can in a short amount of time. So this is what it looks like in the app. So again, this is the screen that the patient will see. You're given the instructions. So you're going to hit start, hold the phone to your chest, take 10 steps down, turn around, take 10 steps back. The important thing is here, one, you want to not give instructions on how they turn around. Excuse me, that's going to be very important on how they turn around, because if they have a deficit, they are going to find a way to make it better, right? So we just want to get that validity of how they're actually turning around. And then also we want to make sure that they are barefoot on a hard surface. And that's, again, just so we're getting valid results. And that's the easiest way to replicate the test. And what we're looking at from this test is we're going to get assessments on power, stride, balance, and symmetry. So again, when we talk about results, once the gait assessment is completed, this is what it's going to look like on the phone. So you're going to click each one of these, and within each one of these is going to be a further breakdown of what we're looking at. So two that I'm going to show you. The first one is stride. So if you're going to click that screen, within stride, you're going to be able to look at their stride time, stance phase, swing phase, and double stance phase. So again, opening up the opportunity to really look at where your deficits may be. And again, a very easy visual graph here of how they're doing and where they fall between either the normative data or their baseline if they have one. And this is the breakdown of the balance indicators. So again, everything is the same visual representation. We just like to show it in multiple places. What I will say about the gait assessment as a clinician is this can be used so far beyond concussion assessment and head injury, right? So if you have a baseline on someone and they sustain a lower extremity injury, again, you are free to use this post-test portion. You can have them only do the gait assessment as they're rehabbing and as they're coming back from injury, and just to get a true read on how they're really doing. And you can really kind of make this through your own, whether you want to have them take a post-test without their ankle taped and then tape their ankle and see how their stability is. You can really make this your own in your school, in your clinic, in your setting. So again, we're going to stop here and see if there are any questions on the gait assessment.
I do have one. Does it matter what type of phone you have? Like an Android compared to like an Apple?
No, we have, we're available on both platforms.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anybody who had, who took the chance to download and the demo and try it out that wants to ask any questions that may have tried it out? Okay.
High school athletes, we just did it for the walking one. If you just wiggle the phone around, it thinks that you're walking. So I would suggest doing it under your supervision.
Okay, that's really good to know. All right, let's keep going. So again, just to review how you would administer a baseline. Print out the QR code and have the athlete either do it under your supervision if you trust them. If the situation requires them to do it remotely, they can do it remotely as well. And this is what they will see. To that point of wiggling your phone, just their brief medical history, these are things that you would likely want to review when you're looking at their baseline, just if it's an athlete that just to make sure they're reporting things properly. So this is an example of what a full result will look like. So you will be able to see this as the administrator, and it can be downloaded as a PDF to either be printed or emailed or put into your EMR. So you'll see where they fall on the color grid here. You'll see their T-score, their score history. This picture doesn't show it, but if this person has multiple post-test, you'll be able to see each of those scores here so you can track their progression. And this is just a visual representation of the bell curve and where they fall on that bell curve. Also, at the bottom of this PDF, each one of these sections is defined. So if the athlete, the parent, or even the physician you're sending it to has any questions, all of that is explained on there. So it is very easily understood by anybody who's reading it. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the sideline assessment, because I think everybody has a handle on baselines, but what happens when someone has a head injury. So what you're going to do in that instance is you'll take out your phone and you'll be able to do the sideline assessment on your phone by just selecting the name of that athlete. If that athlete doesn't have a baseline, you will have to put them in the system at that time. Just a side note. And then our sideline screener, includes the Glasgow Coma Scale, the nerve assessment, myotomes, dermatomes, and the symptom tracker. And all of these are optional. So whichever order you would like to do, if your physician that you're working with likes to see something other, rather than something else, you can just click which one you would like to complete. You don't have to complete all of them. So this is an example, and I did not mention, we do have the SCAT-6 assessment that should be in, Crosby, I don't want to misquote, but here in the near future, the SCAT-6 will be available, correct?
Yes, we are currently working with the CISG to get permission to digitize the SCAT-6. So it's a lengthy process, and we've been going back and forth with them for quite a while. But we believe we're in the final stages. We just have a couple things that they wanted us to adjust, and those adjustments have been made, and now it's kind of in their court to tell us when we're good to go. But we believe that should be out in the next like 46 weeks is kind of what we're targeting, just based on their response times in the past.
So when that's available, again, that'll just be the SCAT-6 that you would do with pen and paper, but it'll be available in the app so that you're not having to use pen and paper. And whichever of the screeners you choose to do, this is just the example of the cranial nerve assessment. All of the instructions are there. All of the descriptions are there. So I think about that again as a clinician and a teacher. If you have a young athletic trainer that you're having to do the assessment and they're just a little unsure, all of the information is there to help them be successful. Same thing here with the VOMs. That is really cool and pretty important that all of the instructions are there for the VOMs assessment, and we even include the metronome. So again, trying to make this process as efficient as we possibly can for the clinician. And finally, we also have the stress, anxiety, and depression screener. So this is one that you likely won't have a baseline on, but if you have an athlete that you're concerned about, they're having lingering symptoms, this is something that you can send them just so you can get a handle on that person, and we're making sure that we're treating the entire person and not just the injury. So again, I know that was pretty quick, but just to review, the gait assessment is completed using the accelerometer in your phone, and we're getting information on power, stride, symmetry, and balance. The CPT Cognitive assessment is valid and reliable for over 6 months post-injury. And where this is important is we know that the SCAT-6 is documented as only valid for the first 72 hours. And then some of the other tests, because of the learn effect, are really only showing valid results for about a week after injury. So because we don't have the learned effect, you can repeat this test as many times as possible and you're still going to get valid results. And then finally, the remote assessment. So we didn't really talk about the remote portion other than the baseline. If someone sustains an injury and let's say you get a phone call or a text message, you can also send them a post-test remotely if they are not in your direct vicinity at that time. So again, trying to make this available to get your results. And I will say as well, especially those who work with Dr. Wagner, he will have the ability to send a remote test. So that will be able to be seen by both you and him, so that he can get the results as well. So again, I feel like I went over a lot of information in a little bit of time. So we're just going to stop here and open the floor for any questions anyone may have.
Hey, Nicole, is there a single sign-on like it is online? Like, is there a specific Prisma sign-on for the app for this, like it is online?
There is not for the SportGait app, but there is for the clinician portal. So Crosby can answer more about the single sign-on. So I think we will have to work on that using your Prisma credentials for the SportGait app, but I'm going to turn that over to the technology person.
Yes, I'm so technical. No, so that is something that we are prioritizing and working on specifically because we know Prisma and a couple of our other customers would like to see single sign-on. So again, it's in that portal, the clinic portal already. And it is something that should be developed before the end of the summer's done, so you all can get into the system and start using it.
When will it become live?
When will it become live? Was that the question?
Yes.
I think that is dependent on Dr. Wagner and your physician. So from ours end, as soon as we get the go ahead to send you your credentials for your school, we're ready to roll. But I think the physicians were kind of waiting to time it out so that everybody gets it at the same time.
He was waiting on this meeting to show it to everybody, and then.
Ah,
Yeah, and then the other thing is the other physicians may or may not want to use this wholesale versus partially. So he's got to kind of coordinate that. Wagner's ready to roll, but
yeah,
maybe
that makes sense.
I think Pollock's a little more in the middle. So depending on who your non-op is, most start figuring out what is your protocol. Because
Gotcha.
I think for the most part, yeah, this is after this meeting we start doing the.
Do y'all have any selling points to your advantage versus Sway? Like, for example, my school already has Sway, and so asking them to switch over is, they're gonna be like, why? Like, that doesn't make sense. So do you have anything that we could potentially tell them?
Yeah, so I don't know a whole lot about Sway. I will be honest, and Crosby might be able to fill in a little bit here. But I think we're getting results that are valid a lot longer, right? So you can have the test again is showing valid results for up to 6 months, and being able to use not only the balance portion, there's so many different aspects to what we're doing rather than just focusing on concussion care. There's the ability to personalize it, whether you want to share this with your strength coaches on the performance side using just the gait assessment itself. All of our results can be personalized for you. Is there anything you want to add to that, Crosby?
Yeah, so one of the main things that in the majority of the research that Sway has done is they compare themselves to BESS. And I haven't read the majority of their papers that they've put out recently, but when I first came to SportGait as a customer, the reason we actually chose SportGait over Sway was that Sway was only comparing themselves to BESS, and their research was showing that they were equal to BESS. So they weren't even saying that they were better, which you would assume, right? Since you're using an objective measurement, you would assume that it is better than what you're seeing with your naked eye. And the research at the time was showing that they were equal. So I think we had it on one of our slides that we actually outperform BESS. So our BKG Gait actually outperforms BESS. I think it's fourfold. I would have to go back and double check that. So you're actually getting a more accurate and a more reliable measure with our BKG Gait versus just a static balance test. So remember, they're very different. Also, you have the static balance versus having this, gait. You're looking at movement through space and things like that. It's just giving you a lot more information.
How often do we have to repeat the baseline test?
It's suggested to do it yearly. But again, that will be up to you and your physician.
How does
I-
the gait-
I was going to say, I worked for an institution that would baseline every 2 years unless there was a head injury sustained. So if you sustained a head injury at any point since your last baseline, then that baseline would be completed the following year.
So the gait analysis, does it account for any recent injuries, like say a recent ankle sprain or knee surgery or something like that that would throw the gait off? Are there any
Yep, so
questions?
that's where that medical history portion of the baseline comes into play, but they can also put that in there before they take like a post gait analysis. So for example, I have my niece had ACL surgery in January. And so while we were there, I had her just kind of try the gait assessment and we were able to put in her injury history there. So you have an explanation for any asymmetries that you may see.
This is through.
So it'd be free to the school. That is one show. We don't get any kickback.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that.
I said, it's free to the schools. We're not gonna charge the schools for it.
Correct, it's through Prisma.
I have a question. So you do the baseline, the person gets injured, you do a post assessment. Is it gonna tell me that they have a concussion? Or is that part still up to me to decide?
It has indicators on there. So based on both the symptoms that they report after injury and your assessment, it will give you those indicators. And that's where that tab will fall away from the green based on your assessment.
It's the baseline change. So if a person comes back from a concussion and they score better, does that marker move?
That is a feature that we have been discussing. It does not move currently, but if you contact support, we can manually change it to the new baseline for now. It's a feature that we've been discussing making available to all of you to just make that switch. There's some arguments for it and some arguments against it. So it's not a feature that's been requested very often, so it's not super high on our priority list. But again, we can make that switch for you until we decide to build that out.
If my athlete is at another school that is a Prisma school, will that athletic trainer there be able to test the athlete on site? Or put the information in?
So they wouldn't have that athlete in their system, but they would be able to input that information and test them and send you the report. Crosby, I'll let you answer if there's a way to then connect that.
Yeah, so that athlete would actually be created twice then right now. Once in that, we'll call it the home school, and then in that visitor school. If the visitor athletic trainer sends you the SportGait ID that they created when they did the assessment at that visitor school, you can pull them in, but also you can contact support and we can merge that then into one athlete and move it to the home school.
People about pulling annual data of concussions within a year with SportGait.
So again,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, so you can contact support and we'd be able to give you all of that data at whatever increment you would like, whether it's at the end of a season or end of a year, those kind of things. And I know that's one thing that Dr. Wagner is interested in as well, is looking at the data of everything as we're implementing all of these new measures.
Online, there is a sideline component that you sat here and talked about. So it doesn't have to be done in a controlled environment. It literally can be done on the sideline at the game.
Ideally, you want to be in a controlled environment. So, you know, you can do like the gait assessment or have them do the CPT test on the sideline, knowing that there are different measures. But ideally, if you could get to the locker room per se. And that's why I brought up if you have like an intern or a student doing the assessment, if you aren't able to leave the sideline and you have somebody else administering the post test, you know, we're not trying to get rid of everything we've learned as athletic trainers as far as testing them in a controlled environment, but we're trying to just reduce the amount of things you have to collect in order to do the assessment.
For clarification, it can be done from the clinician's phone and also from the student's phone? Because I know oftentimes students will come from class and not have their phone.
Yes, it can. Yep. So when you pull it up as a clinician, it will say administer on this device, or you'll have the option administer on this device or administer on athlete's device. So you can either hit on this device. If you hit the athlete's device, the QR code will pop up for them to be able to scan, or for you to send to them.
Other questions? I think that's it. For
Great.
questions.
So Adara, you have our contact, Adara, sorry. You have our contact information. So if there's any questions that come up once we leave, please feel free to reach out. We're here to be of assistance to you, especially knowing that this is going to be implemented here in the fall. We want to make sure that we're getting all your questions answered as soon as possible.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. You guys have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.